We are live with another episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Jason Aponte, joined as always by Steph Sanchez. Steph, how are you? I feel like I haven't seen you since last week.
Such a long time. Well, I'm good. I got my giant mug of coffee, and so I'm ready to rock, man. Let's go.
Yeah, coffee is life right now at this point, especially this early in the morning. Although it's 11:22 on the East Coast, so I really shouldn't complain as much. But got a lot to talk about. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to all three channels as we're on right now. Make sure you're subscribed to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get all your audio podcasts. So, first thing I want to kind of start off with, Steph, and we don't have to spend too much time on it. Is JT O'Sullivan's video of Kyle Shanahan. So I want to preface this discussion with the video being a part of a bit of a tradition now that's going on with JT O'Sullivan in terms of his videos on April 1st. So let's take you back to 2 years ago. Last no, two it is two April Fools ago, when the quarterback controversy about Justin Fields, Mac Jones, all of these guys, everything was up. He put out a video basically speaking to the, let's just be frank, the dog whistling of how black quarterbacks are evaluated and why they're always talked about with the same things, whether that's one read, all this stuff, any of those things, and kind of just made jokes about it, but also had good evaluations in there. So this year, his attention turned to Kyle Shanahan. And he dressed like Kyle. And I think it's a little weird that I didn't realize how much he looked like Kyle.
Yeah,
Um,
lightweight.
right. He definitely did, right? And shout out to our guy Patrick, shout out to Sam. He got into the video itself, right, with one of the tweets. So for me, I really just took it as a bit of an April Fool's joke. There were some jabs in there for sure. Like it felt like JT wanted to get some jabs in there as well, too. But what I felt was really actually impactful from it was, while he was giving some of the blame to Kyle Shanahan in terms of the quarterback injuries, he did give examples of the injuries of why it fell on other players, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel in certain places. So I did think that that was impactful stuff. I know you didn't really watch it too much, but this something that people should really be taking seriously, or are they going too hard for the April Fool's joke?
I mean, it's all fun and games, right? But I'm glad that he did add, that context because as we know, like JT O'Sullivan is a very respected guy as far as his evaluation of quarterbacks and the videos he puts out, great work. And so I think for some people to hear it coming from him, I know we've been preaching this for a long time now that okay, Kyle Shanahan is not to blame for these injuries, but I think hearing it from someone else who's like well respected as well from the outside, I think could give fans another perspective. But yeah, I couldn't watch it. Like I started watching it, I was like, this is a little cringe. Like
Mm-hmm.
I that's the reason why I didn't watch it. But it was cool though. He had the whole like Shanahan fit on. Like
Mm-hmm.
the letter the bomber jacket, the hoodie, the hat. Man, I didn't know it was so easy to copy his swag, but it is pretty basic, but it's also it's got style, you know what I mean? That's my coach.
That is my coach, man. And I'm still on the train of the best outfit he's ever worn was the CJ Beathard year when they went to Green Bay and he wore the black Shanahan hat with the black jacket and the black hoodie. I was
Mm,
like, yeah, that's it right there. That's the one.
that was fire.
Um I do think he said something to the idea of the drop back passing isn't as sophisticated as his play action and run games, and I think that's not a crazy criticism or anything like that. Again, I do think that it's important to understand that while these injuries are going to fall on the coach because of one thing. It's not necessarily the play call. It's more about the execution because Trent Williams doesn't get down the block for Trey Lance because, Tyler Croft didn't necessarily block very well. It's not necessarily that he chose to block with a tight end two. Is that the tight end two whiffed on his block? Who are you more mad at, the play call or the player? So there, I think that that was the good part of it. What I took away is that sometimes we do have to look at the players at times as opposed to just throwing it at the feet of the coach. Now, does the coach bear some responsibility when it comes to execution? Absolutely. Who's the one who's preparing these guys? It has to come back to him in some way. But I do think that this video was a bit eye-opening, so you don't just run to actual, like, oh, it's all the coach's fault for this. Well, there's things that lead up to it. Everyone's enamored with the result. They just don't understand the process and what's really supposed to happen on some of these plays. So I think that was really good to see in that video. But overall, more of a joke than anything. But I do think there was some good stuff for you to take away and look at in case you're still upset about the way that the season ended, in my opinion.
Why do you think that Kyle's drop back game his passing game may not be as sophisticated. Do you think that's more so a reflection of the quarterbacks that he's had in the system? Because I don't know if it's just because of Kyle, right? And because he's a genius as far as I'm concerned.
Right, that's the thing is, Jimmy Garoppolo, it's not exactly you didn't want him necessarily turning his back, drop backing all the time. You
Right.
you had to go through the way that you get guys open, whether that's rub routes, whether that's motion, whether that's, using play action. I just don't think that it's something. The idea is to use the run game to get the play action open, and I do think that the quarterback, whoever it is, Lance Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, has to do with that. If he had a straight, pure drop back passer, and I guess this is a perfect way to segue into this next topic, I think that he would be able to change that. Not to say that Brock Purdy isn't, but he's still stuck with those things because he was protecting a rookie, and he wanted to make sure the rookie was in his best spot. And who can argue with the results? I mean, they were putting up points in bunches. So, speaking of drop back passes, Steph, you and I were at the combine. And this is something that's just come out again, but I feel like it was already out during the combine. So our good old buddy Mike Florio, who's a friend of the pod, friend of Rob Guerrera, he reports that the 49ers at the combine were still sniffing around Kirk Cousins. Now, this is the 49ers version of the Notebook. You're in a relationship with someone else, but I'm not going to stop pursuing you because what do you want? Tell me what you want. It's not that easy. Tell me what you want. That is Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins. But Steph, what did you take away from this resurfaced report about Kirk Cousins and the 49ers linking up again?
I know that you said you understand the context behind why this was getting popped up, and so I don't know if I know that. So after I speak, please enlighten us. But I don't take it too seriously. I think at this point it is kind of what you said, that everyone knows that Kyle Shanahan is just in love with Kirk Cousins as a quarterback, and he will not let that dream go. Even if it's unlikely at this point, he's going to continue thinking about it. You know what I mean? So I think that's all it is. I don't think there's any truth to it actually being something that happens. You know what I mean? For the same reason that I think the 49ers mentioned, like, they wouldn't pursue Lamar Jackson, I think it wouldn't make sense for them to pursue Kirk Cousins, because you think about the contract that he would need. You think about the draft picks that that would
The
cost as
drip.
well. The
The
drip,
drip,
yeah,
definitely.
that
So
too.
the White Sox and the sandals.
The chain, the chest hair, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But you know what I mean. So it's like I don't see it happening, and I think now that we know, this was of course before we knew like what the surgery with Brock Purdy was going to look like and the recovery time and all that. I think now that we know, I think that's kind of off the table. But it's going to continue to be a running joke, and I'm sure it's a joke among league circles as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was part of the talk as well.
Steph, that's it. You nailed it. That's the context behind it. It's the timeline, right? We were at the combine. John Lynch speaks, and he says he doesn't know what's going to be happening with Brock Purdy. Well, of course, there's going to be connections to the 49ers and Kirk Cousins just based off that. You don't need to be an insider to put that together. But what Mike Florio is saying is that the 49ers actually were gaining steam about talking about it because there was a bit of a fear that maybe Brock Purdy was going to be injured and out for the entire year. So the timeline matches up. I want to tell 49er fans this. When you hear things, it shouldn't get you completely upset. Sometimes it's very easy to just look at right away what the timeline is. And it does make sense. John Lynch literally talked about, we don't know what it'll be until the doctor so-and-so gets in there. And I feel like that with all players. So the combine is where the meetings of the minds are. I mean, for God's sakes, we spoke with Kevin O'Connell when we were there, just bumped into him while we were having a beer at the place. The entire football world is there. Of course, there's going to be discussions. The only person that wasn't there was Kyle, but there's always going to be those sort of discussions. So when you look at the timeline, them not knowing what was going on with Brock, the fact that everyone knows that Kyle's enamored with Kirk, it's not so far-fetched. So again, it doesn't mean that just because you disagree with it that you need to just fly off the deep end and just say, oh God, I hate this guy. Why does he always keep doing this? Sometimes it's actually right there in front of you to figure out. But again, Brock's going to be fine. It sounds like a 6-month timeline. This is a non-issue. I'm not sure why this is coming back up right now.
Exactly. And I'm not sure either because yeah, it came out during the combine. Is coming back again. I didn't really notice it, or like there was a lot going on during the combine time, so I don't think I really noticed it then. So like I saw it now, and I was like, that's weird. Like that doesn't really make sense. But whatever. It's done now. I don't think the 49ers are even looking his direction at this point. It made sense then, doesn't now. Let's just move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirk Cousins, the one that got away from Kyle Shanahan. Absolutely. Some other 49ers news. Trent Williams had a trigger in his contract, which put $10 million in his pocket and essentially locks him into the contract for 3 more years. So there was a lot of talk about Trent Williams being in retirement mode. It sounded like when Trent Williams was able to walk that back, he talked about a 2-year thing. The 3 years, I wouldn't be so wrapped up in, because if he does retire into that 3rd year, it would, the money would go away, right? Like, and I'm not certain how the salary cap works, so I guess I should refrain from saying that. But I do think that this deal, Trent Williams is the perfect encapsulation of why this Super Bowl window is probably 1 or 2 more years. There's no way that you can have the left tackle that you have, who's the best in the world, many consider the best to ever do it, and think that when you move away from him, you are going to upgrade. You are not. The 49ers are the only team that can go from a Hall of Fame left tackle to a better Hall of Fame left tackle. No disrespect to Joe Staley at all. When you look at these pieces, that's why you've got to strike now while the iron is hot, while this man is playing as well as he is still into his age. So Trent Williams, a bit more of a rich man, Steph.
Yeah, he got swag too, by the way.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
I've ever seen an offensive lineman which with as much drip as that man, and so happy he's on my team as well. But I find it interesting, the whole talk about Trent Williams, and we know that retirement is coming soon for him, right? I feel like, yes, we've been talking about the 49ers needing a tackle, but this whole time, like, we've been talking about right tackle. I feel like if the 49ers bring in a tackle, like, not enough people are considering the fact it could be for left tackle, and they may feel good with Colton McKivitz being the right tackle. You know what I mean? So, I think they might even come away getting 2 tackles. Who knows? But I know the 49ers are sniffing around on offensive linemen. So yeah, I think they're going to be looking at contingency plans in this draft. They're looking at their plan of the future for sure.
Makes sense. And again, this is why you have to strike when the iron's hot, and you can't just say, well, we'll be back next year. We'll be back next year. The league is catching up. Guys get older. It's a physical game. George Kittle spoke about the whole idea that now the NFL is adding a second Thursday night football game and saying, I go through a car crash every single week, and the preparation that I put my body through every single day to get back for Sunday is brutal. It's hard, and no one has any idea. The NFL cares about player safety? Absolutely not. They care about the almighty dollar. Sorry, had to get my dig in on the NFL. But Steph, there was something else that came out. There was a rookie EPA per play chart, and we all know how we love advanced analytics. And I think we set our watch to them, and they're the tell all, they're the end all be all when it comes to all of these things. And I think Rob has the chart if he'll pull it up while we're talking. But Brock Purdy was actually second on this list of EPA per play for quarterbacks in their rookie year. Yeah, just a little bit closer. So it's funny, right? So Dak Prescott's number 1. This is great. Dak Prescott's number 1 with a 0.24 EPA per play in his rookie year, but that's over almost close to 700 snaps. What's the one thing that you're noticing with Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, and Mac Jones, number 5, also, by the way? What's the one thing that jumps out at you, Steph, from these 5 guys?
I mean, look at the snap counts, right? The number of plays, and especially Purdy and Watson's numbers, right? Not a big sample size there, and so I think that works favorably for them. Also, as we know, over time, the more time that quarterbacks play in the NFL, the more tape there's going to be on them. We saw, I think, progressively defenses being more prepared for Brock Purdy and what he does well and keen in on those things, right? So I think with more snaps, that number is probably going to go down. But I mean, it's great. It's great that with a small sample size, it looks good. A lot of these quarterbacks are pretty good that are at the top. But yeah, he's gonna have to keep it up, and that will be the question, right? Is this level of play sustainable? That's the big question, and we'll find that out.
See, that's the thing is 281 snaps for Purdy, 283 for Deshaun Watson, and they're both pretty similar when it comes to those things. But I want to take a look at some of the names here. Mac Jones, who necessarily didn't have a good second year, and a lot of that has to do with play calling and weapons. I understand that, fully. Didn't necessarily play his best football either. Let's just, keep it fair. Baker Mayfield in his first year, and now he's on his third team. And then you start to look at the bottom. In their first year, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones just got paid. Kyler
Mhm.
Murray, right? Like it kind of looks funny. Trevor Lawrence, is near the bottom. He's behind Sam Darnold, 49ers legend Sam Darnold. Mitchell Trubisky's at the bottom here. So, like, why am I bringing this up? It's because people at the top necessarily aren't viewed as the best quarterbacks in the league. Dak Prescott. I mean, of course, he's one of the better ones, but I wouldn't say that he's elite. Carson Wentz had a very good year, and then that was it pretty much. Justin Herbert, I think, is getting to that elite status. He has to do a little bit more in the playoffs for people to consider that. Joe Burrow, I would say, is elite. He's there. But then you got guys like Baker Mayfield, and then you got guys at the bottom here, within the middle 10 to 15, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I think they're elite. I think they're very much elite. So all this to say what? To say this is a good sample size. Brock Purdy was incredible when he played. But again, this stat feels a bit not flawed, but it's not the end all be all with EPA per play, right? And again, if you're operating the offense efficiently, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're driving the boat. It just means that you're hitting the throws when they're open. And I think we kind of saw this with he will not be named, the quarterback that was here before as well too. He had a pretty good EPA count. But I just did think this was very interesting because it does highlight how well Brock Purdy played even with a small sample size.
I'll also add, and Lee brought up a good point here in the comments. Dak and Purdy had complete teams. Some of those teams were rebuilds. Speaking of the the other teams that their quarterbacks a little bit lower, I would also say some of those other quarterbacks who we now see as great quarterbacks today, they needed more development time, right? So
Oh,
they weren't like at the top of their game, coming in their rookie year. As we know, Brock Purdy, 4-year starter. And so, he came in with a lot of experience, and clearly that translated over to his play with the 49ers as well as being a complete team that he was a part of. Probably one of the best skill position groups in all of the NFL. So I think he definitely had that going for him too. And so it begs the question, like, is this Brock Purdy's ceiling? That's what I wonder. I kind of want to say that it is, not to be unfair to him, because like it is a small sample size. He hasn't been able to show us what he could do beyond that quite yet. But, looking at the context of what he did, I think he was in a really good position, right? So I think this might be his ceiling. It might be.
breaking news. You heard it here first. Steph Sanchez says quarterbacks, when they get reps, develop and play better. Write that one
Who
down,
knew?
folks.
Who
Who
knew?
knew? Unbelievable. I needed to hear that. Steph, something a little bit more lighthearted. Nick Bosa was pulled over in a traffic incident. Nothing crazy, right? Wasn't driving drunk or anything like that. But you had to kind of know something was coming. So, Steph, why don't you take us through your process when you see this Nick Bosa video and what you do when you get ready to do your impression of him, which is so good.
Well, as soon as I see any clip or as soon as people send me clips, because that's usually how I find out about new
Oh, I
Nick
love
Bosa
that.
videos. Like, people just tag me. I love the suggestions, by the way, so bring them on. And he honestly he gives me like no shortage of content, because he himself is just a content machine. If you think about the way he talks, he wasn't drunk, but people thought he was, just because that
Hmm.
is how he talks. People like this is him in real life. And so it makes it so easy to just be entertaining by just talking like him. You know what I mean? So for me, that's all it is. And I've said it before. Nick Bosa, he's a mumbler. You can tell he's maybe a little introverted a bit. As a recovering introvert myself, like, I identify with that. I feel like I can get into that mode rather quickly. So that's kind of why I'm able to do it so well, I guess.
Hmm.
So those two things together, they work pretty well.
And yeah, I see you slipped it in there at the end too. And it's just, if you think it's an act, right? Like if you think it's an act, I think that traffic stop is really good. I just found it funny that he's like, I have a driver's license appointment.
He's
You
like,
know,
I'm
and
with the 49ers.
and he's like, where's your license? Where's your registration for the car? He's like, it's almost like Nick had no idea what was
No
the
clue.
process, right?
No
Like what?
clue.
Like you need your registration, you need your insurance, all of those things. Like you actually need that. Like, listen, incredible football player, but in the real world, buddy, you still need those things, man. They're not just gonna
Yeah.
say, hey, you're an incredible defensive end. I don't need your license and registration or your insurance. It's just, it seems like there's a lot of people that don't understand that when people are very good at their craft, one way or another, right? You know, musicians, actors, you know, football players, basketball players, any sort of activity like that. When you put in so much work and that is your life, sometimes the little things in life escape you
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't been practicing them, right? Like you have not practiced being pulled over. You have no idea what the process is when it comes to that. You kind of just walk into the dealership and say, that one, here's the check. I'm going over here, right? Like us real people, we have to barter and negotiate, you know, with how much we want to pay per month. Can we fit this in our budget? Not so when you are rich off of football.
Well,
So again,
also to your
yeah,
point, like football is Nick Bosa's entire life.
yep,
Like I can't imagine how long he's been playing it. I'm not sure as a child, clearly, but also I think it's just everything about him. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's why, like during the season, we called him a serial killer because he's just focused on one thing, which is getting to the quarterback and becoming a better, pass rusher. So credit to him, man, but you're gonna have to get a little bit better at those traffic stops. Have your insurance ready, have your registration on hand, sir. But no, it was so entertaining. I'm glad that he gives us entertainment and content. Great content.
And, and I love this name on YouTube. Relax Bro says Bosa saying he was with the 49ers was kind of funny. Almost like he's gonna say, oh, you're Nick. Wait, Nick Bosa. Like I would have noticed right away. Obviously, I'm a 49er fan, but it wasn't gonna get him out of that stop. Like that's definitely not enough. So I just do think that was funny. Either way, minor situation. People get pulled over, you know, all the time for either not signaling. I mean, hell, I just did. And I got hit with a pretty hefty fine. But hey, whatever. That has nothing to do with anything, right? I don't play football, so they wouldn't like let the fine go or anything like that for me. So
No, you should
uh,
have told him I have a podcast. I have a
yeah,
49ers
I'm Jason
podcast.
Aponte of Gold Standard
I'm a
Podcast
content
Network.
creator.
Bud, do you know who I am, pal? The guy would have been like, now step out of the car for that. But yeah. So Steph, we're getting closer and closer to the draft. Getting very it doesn't use turn signals exactly. It was just one time, man. It was just one time. So for me, this is getting closer and closer to the draft. The 49ers don't have a first or second round pick. It's forced Steph and I to kind of go deep into the weeds when it comes to prospects. So easy when you have a first round pick. You're looking through blue chip talent. You're trying to figure
Yeah,
out where that is. Thank God. Hopefully next year we can get back to that because that would be awesome. But
they need it.
draft crushes. Now, first of all, I think there's this like knife behind the 49ers fans' backs. And the knife is a third round running back. And I think a lot of 49er fans have really accepted the idea that the 49ers will be drafting another running back in the third round. Steph, talk to me about who the 49ers have actually met with that play that position.
I mean, he's joking, by the way. That no more running backs in the
I didn't
third
say I wanted
round.
that. I didn't say I wanted
No,
that. A lot of 49er fans are just setting their watch to it and they don't care at this point. They're just
it's
like, you can't
so
hurt me. You can't hurt me if I know what's coming.
It's so funny because every time I like post that the 49ers met with a running back, I just get people like, no, like not another running back, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be off the team in 2 years. Like outrage. And then the
Like you're
other
the one
day,
making the pick. Like you're the one
yeah,
meeting
yeah.
with them.
And then the other day I posted like, okay, they met with Cameron Peoples out of App State. He's a third day guy. And everyone was like, oh, okay. I like that. That'll work. He'll be on the team. It's just funny people's perception of running backs on this team. But yeah, they'll definitely, I think, either draft one late or get an undrafted free agent. I feel like they always look to get running backs just because they go through them, so quickly. Injuries happen and all that. But it would just be a rotational piece. Now, positions that I'm looking at, obviously, like tackles and tight ends is kind of the biggest thing that gets me excited leading up to this draft. I mean, I just Justin M on Twitter. I don't know his full name. I think it's like Moreno
It's
or something
Justin.
like. No,
Imagine Dad Nation.
no, not him. Shout out to him though. I love him, but
You mean Billy M?
No, I'm talking about here. I just posted it. Hold on. This is live, baby. This is live
This is great.
podcasting.
This is great live podcasting right here.
It literally on Twitter. His name is Justin M underscore NFL.
Okay.
So he writes for like the Titans, but he also works for the Draft Network. So he interviews a lot of prospects, and in that he gets information on who some of those prospects have met with. Zach Kuntz, tight end, Old Dominion. We like
Yep.
him.
Yep.
He met with 49ers at the combine, which we knew, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Justin said that in this interview, Zach Kuntz said he recently met with or had Zoom meetings with several teams, tight end coaches, including the 49ers. So
Got some breaking news real quick,
the
Steph.
the
Just
Kuntz
real quick.
hive is buzzing.
Buzzing.
Also, I like Tyler Steen a lot out of Alabama. You know, a lot of people are mentioning names, tackles for the 49ers, rightfully so. Blake Freeland, Wanya Morris, couple names that get brought up. I'm not hearing enough people talking about Tyler Steen, though, so that's one name to look at, someone who the 49ers met with at the Combine and the Senior Bowl. We'll see if there's some top 30s going around. As of right now, I think the only top 30 visits that we know of are 3. Antonio Mafi at a UCLA, offensive lineman.
Yep.
Marty Mapu, Sac State, baller. He's a linebacker. And then safety Jordan Howden out of Minnesota. So keep an eye on those, because that's usually, like, if you look at who the 49ers have met with in the top 30s, that's usually who they end up drafting more likely than not. So keep an eye on some of those names as those names start to come out more.
Some breaking news real quick. This is great stuff for being here on the live podcast. The Raiders have signed veteran quarterback Brian Hoyer. Sounds like Josh McDaniels is getting the band back together. Back up for Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer. And this just came across as well, too. More Florio bombs. Mike Florio has said that the Patriots shopped Mac Jones to multiple teams. The Raiders, the Texans, the Bucks, and the Commanders were mentioned. The Raiders kind of make sense because of Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
The Texans make sense because, Caserio wasn't there when they drafted him. The Bucks make sense because there's no way, unless they want to try to, fight for Caleb Williams, will they just be starting Kyle Trask and having Baker Mayfield behind them. And the Commanders, it's Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, if I'm not mistaken. So that kind of feels all right. But, yeah, Brock Hoyer, Brian Hoyer. So trade for Mac. Who says no? I say no. I say hell no. No, thank you. I'm
but
good.
Jay, who do you think will get traded first, Trey Lance or Mac Jones?
Neither of them.
I find it hilarious, though, because everyone was like, "Oh, the 49ers should have picked Mac Jones. He's a better quarterback." And then here we are, Bill Belichick agitated with Mac Jones, wants him gone. I mean, but at the same time, Trey Lance also in the position that he's in. So maybe the pick should have been Justin Fields this whole time.
Steph, here's the funny thing is what Bill Belichick is doing right now is making an example of Mac Jones. He didn't like the way he was conducting himself in his second year, yelling on the sideline, all of those things. So he's just saying, you know what? You don't fit. I don't care. I don't care what you've done. Nothing is bigger than the system. Nothing's bigger than the system. Nothing's bigger than what we've built here. So you can get out. My thing is this. The 49ers with Trey Lance, and we're going to pivot because I want to talk about draft questions. I don't want to keep talking about the quarterback position. The 49ers are surprised that the project quarterback they drafted is a project.
Right.
If you didn't want the project, Mac Jones was there and he could have started right away. Miscalculation. That's the name of the game when it comes to the quarterback position for the 49ers as they continue on. But draft questions, and I want to stick with tight ends as well, too, because I feel like they need to add another tight end who can actually catch the football and do it consistently and is actually a threat down the field. No disrespect, Ross Dwelly, but I'm good, buddy. I think we know what we're getting from you at this point. My guy is Will Mallory from Miami. Wears 85, rumbling down the field, kind of looks like George Kittle, but his metrics. You mentioned Kuntz. It's Will Mallory, Kuntz, and Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, I'm sorry, Steph. He's for the streets. Like he's not ours. He's not for us. So he's definitely gone. He was the fastest. Will Mallory was second, and Kuntz was third as far as 40-yard dash speed. Will Mallory wasn't a part of the passing game, but he can get up the seam. I love him so much. Again, for a lot of people who say, well, you can't play here if you don't block, explain Ross Dwelly. And if you need to develop something else, let's just say explain Charlie Warner because he's the blocking tight end and he can't catch. So for me, I understand the schematic point of it. It's hard to take Kyle Juszczyk off the field, especially because he's so important to what you do in identifying man. And there's only so many positions out there. But man, what I love the idea of Kittle, Mallory, Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Brock Purdy, whoever, as the quarterback, man, I think it's going to be a nightmare to try and cover all those guys. So yeah, I've kind of had my eye on tight ends, but for me, don't block means doghouse, though. Yeah, explain that to Ross Dwelly. Explain that to Tyler Croft. I don't know, man. Doghouse only matters for the people that, one guy can whiff on a block and Kyle's like, oh, it's cool, man. Get back out there. You got this. One guy takes one step wrong on a route, go into the doghouse, and you're never going to see the other. That's always been my biggest complaint with Kyle is he never, ever keeps it the same with all players. It's one player. Brandon Ayuk, you're a baller. But you know what? You didn't run fast enough in practice. I can't throw you the football anymore. But Charlie Warner drops a pass wide open down the middle of the field in Atlanta. Nah, man, it's cool. You can get back out there, buddy. I'm good on that. I don't subscribe to the doghouse thing anymore about if you don't block, because if that was true, almost every single player that makes a mistake would have to be thrown in there. But yeah, I definitely like Will Mallory, man. I just, again, play to his strengths, get him out of space, put him on a linebacker. He's not going to be able to be covered. And after the catch, he's very good as well, too. So that's the guy that I'm kind of looking at. And I'm going to go a little bit off script here. I have my eyes on a cornerback, but I think, sadly, Steph, I think he's for the streets as well, too. So I was going through mock drafts, and the name Eli Ricks from Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness, man. So he played at LSU for 3 years. He goes to Bama and transfers there for his third year, because he's a true junior. I'm sorry. So he played there for 2 years, and he's a true junior. And he only played in the last 7 games of the year. And he just has the chance to be the best corner in this draft. And I think after his pro day, because he didn't work out at the combine, which kind of left him like laying in the weeds. And that's when I started to really look into him. But I see a guy who's incredible in man, in zone. He breaks on the ball. He's a dog in the run game. He has amazing ball skills. The reason that I'm thinking cornerback is this, and this is, Diamador Lenore played very well. Let's not bury the lead when it comes to that. But Diamador Lenore can slide right back into the slot. You're talking about starting Eli Ricks and Mooney Ward. And the other thing I want to point out is this. When you look at the cornerback depth after Mooney Ward and not Emmanuel Mosley, I'm sorry, I wish he was still here, and Diamador Lenore, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good.
You don't like Ambry Thomas, dude?
The Niners don't like Ambry Thomas. That's not. I mean, they're literally turning to everybody. They're literally turning to everybody but Ambry at this point. Think about it, right?
I know, for good reason.
So when Mooney got hurt, when Emmanuel Mosley got hurt, right? Lenore goes out there. Even in that Atlanta game, when Mooney left that game, Samuel Womack went outside, right? And it wasn't his best showing, right? So it doesn't matter what I think about Ambry Thomas. The team is telling you what they believe about Ambry Thomas. And I think that stretch of play that you saw, in the year that the 49ers played the Rams in the NFC title game was a lot of masking that, with the fact that, you have this incredible pass rush and they weren't really throwing the ball his way. And, he did make a great play in the final game, but the NFC title game, it kind of really reared its ugly head because he's playing 10, 15 yards off of Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham's just killing this team by just getting underneath him and just catching 7-yard slants that are going for 10, 15 yards. So yeah, I mean, the team has lost confidence in him. I mean, you would have thought that he was the de facto ready to go next guy up. And in training camp, it just wasn't there. Like, it didn't matter who he was covering, unfortunately. So for me, I just love the idea of having a cost control stud like Eli Ricks if you're able to get him. And you probably won't be able to get him in 99. You just have to push up to go get him. But I'm starting to think about this cornerback depth on this team and getting a little bit more worried about it, just because there has been a sample size of not playing well, right? And when you're out there, the one thing is cornerback is a confidence thing, right? We saw with Akello Weatherspoon. Akello Weatherspoon would have stretches where he was the guy and he's stomping around and he's flexing and he looks great. We also have other times, and thank you for the donation, TL. Keep up the good work stuff. You go over the top on him 1 or 2 times, and that's it. The confidence is gone, right? Yeah, it's kind of what we were seeing with Ambry and Camp. Confidence gone. It didn't matter who was in front of him. It's not like it was Brandon Ayuk. If it's Brandon Ayuk who was baking everybody who was in front of him because he's a baller and he was just on one in camp, it's one thing. But it didn't matter who was in front of him. So I don't know. Specifically to fix Ambry, I don't know about that. They brought him in to be the defensive coordinator, and he's a secondary guy. I don't think every time is going to see the field, and I do think that they need more proven commodities. Hi, Marcus Peters, if you're watching, would you like to play football for free for the San Francisco 49ers? So just my thought.
But you know what? I do like the fact that Wilkes being here. Clearly, he has things that he likes to have in his secondary, which is versatility. We've seen it with some of the, free agents that they've brought in this offseason. And so I think he has a clear vision for what he's looking for. And, that should be exciting to fans as well, because in this draft, I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to kind of retool the depth that the 49ers have. And it's going to be with a clear intention in mind. And so I think some of these guys are going to hopefully stick around.
But yeah, and again, like the whole idea is he's a secondary guy. So if there is anybody who can help him regain that, it's him. But for me, when you have a blue chip guy who could be there like Eli Ricks, I don't really care to develop him anymore when you can have a set it and forget it starter across, and you can build up. Like, I know Isaiah Oliver's here to be in the slot, but I would give Lenore the first shot again because he's earned it. He's played very well, and he actually did well in the slot. He took the job back from Samuel Womack and forced himself on the field. If you're talking about a combination of Eli Ricks and Mooney Ward starting right away, and obviously I'm probably just talking myself in circles because he's not going to be there at 99, and the 49ers are most likely not targeting him because, who gives a damn what I want. But I'm just thinking about, like, what could make this defense a little bit better, especially if right now, for all intents and purposes, your edge situation, aside from Nick Bosa, is a little bit of hope and wait and see. And I didn't know we were getting an appearance from Simba. Simba, what's up, buddy?
He's got some opinions, so
he does?
He's here. Yes, he does.
Simba, what does Kyle need to do better? All right. Come on. Nothing? All right. Well, we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for tapping in on all the channels. Make sure you like and subscribe to all the channels. Steph's channel, Steph 49K. Mine, Jason Aponte. That's where you can find it. And the Gold Standard Pod Network. Wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you're subscribed to that. But make sure you're subscribed to all 3 YouTube channels. Make sure you're following all of us on Twitter at Steph49K, at Jason Aponte 2103, and GS Podcast on Twitter. Steph, it's been good to talk with you, but hopefully next week we'll have some actual news to talk about. Yeah, right. All right. Yeah, for Steph, for Jay, we're out of here. Peace.